Rivers of the Mind, Season 3, Episode 7. The Journey to Ntia.
The first night that I discovered I could read minds, the first night that I realized that I would never come down from this trip, I felt as though I was floating in a massive river, drifting with the current, letting it push me along, trusting it. For a moment, it was a peaceful, zen-like thought to which I latched onto. It quieted my anxious mind for a few days. But now I looked out over the side of the boat at the churning blue water underneath the hull. And instead of serenity, the thought of the river filled my heart and my mind with fear. Knowledge of the uncertainty of trusting the course of the water, of the fragility of the boat we traveled in, of the loneliness of our passage. The river narrowed to a canyon shortly after we boarded the ship, one with high walls streaked with blue veins. Metamorphic rock, most of it, with traces of igneous rock that grew more abundant the higher you got. On the tops of the canyon walls, rows of strange-looking flowery trees glistened in the light. Enchanted by the sight of those trees with their dancing flowers and leaves and branches, I looked into the sky, hoping to avoid thinking of the river. But the sky above our heads became a river instead. The beautiful trees now eddies lashing at a shoreline. The sound of the immense roaring filled my heart with dread. There was a waterfall in the distance. I could hear Dedjerba think of it for a moment. I shut my eyes. I strained to shut myself out from the minds around me. But inevitably I still heard their sounds, their colors. I felt the contours of their movements and their meanderings bending around me. But I didn't want to let them in or listen to them. Struggling against that was little use. My telepathy didn't really have a very clear off button, just a sort of volume knob that never really went all the way to 0. Sapphire leaned against the railing next to me. We weren't quite talking, but she was thinking about the bird, and I couldn't help but hear her. I wanted to comfort her, but I didn't know what to say yet. I turned to Dedjerba as he passed behind me.
There's a waterfall coming, isn't there?
His heart grew grim, but his chest puffed up with a near suicidal bravado.
Aye, but nothing I haven't seen before. In fact, far to the south, there are waterfalls so great you cannot see the sky behind them. An entire city could drift into its depths, and you would not so much as notice the sound, or much less the sight, so wide and tall they are. And this was only the largest of 7 great waterfalls there at the end of that river. 7 days it took for us to pass them.
He made this boast, though he feared that as he made such claims that I would have traveled to the south, and that I would know that the supposedly great waterfall was not half as high as he made it sound. Dedjerba hadn't seen even a fraction of the things that he'd expected to see at the edge of the world. Just a blank white page, streaked with lines of deep blue, surrounded by a slowly receding darkness. Knowing his secret, whenever I needed to tell him a story about my exploration, I would only draw from the things he had expected to see there.
It reminds me of the cataracts of the Sheba River. They pour from the mountains of Nur at a place where the land splits apart and buckles over itself. In the caves alongside this great rock wall, there live people who fly along ropes and bathe themselves nude in the glorious downpour of the river.
Dedjerba hoped that if he met strange and foreign people someday in his exploits, they would indeed bathe nude beneath a waterfall and swing from ropes. It was wishful and oddly specific thinking. Smirking with envy that I had seen naked people under a waterfall, he leaned up against the railing next to me.
Many wondrous things there are to see in this world.
Surely, but one I haven't heard you speak of.
Oh?
Ntia, your city. From others' lips, yes, I've heard its name, but never truly glimpsed its wonders.
Well, I'm sure word of its greatness has spread.
He said this, though he remained quite surprised that anyone had actually heard of Ntia, let alone spoken of its supposed wonders. He wondered for a moment if I would be as disappointed with his city as he himself was with the many legendary cities he had visited. Mindful of what it felt like to be an explorer expected to bring back magnificent stories to my home city, Dedjerba continued and offered some suggestions.
Oh, it truly is a sight to behold. A city interwoven with the River Ya. A city built on peace and love.
Peace and love?
A long time ago, Ya rose up above the houses of the ancestors. He drowned their cities, for they were wicked. They had grown hateful and violent. He did away with their old languages and ushered in new and different words, so that the people would need to learn to understand one another, to build a new city of peace and love. And so was built my Ntia, fair, beautiful, free. As a water lily blooming in the light of dawn, her rooftops glistened with the colors of fresh amber, forever set in her dance with the great River Ya, powered by his ceaseless motion that presses up against the great levee breaks and turns the water wheels of her factories.
He looked off romantically, if forlorn, before turning his ear downriver, cupping it with his hand.
The falls are near. Come, we will go ashore and lower the boat down. From there, it is a smooth trip to Ntia.
How long were we asleep?
Long enough for you to become a male river god in a newly industrializing society.
But short enough that I still feel tired, huh? That's just great.
I guess your gambit paid off at least.
Maybe. I hope you're right. It wasn't really my idea, though. It was just the bird. There it goes again. Do you know what it's saying?
I can hear it, but it doesn't think words very often, just pictures.
What do you think it's trying to say?
I don't know. Something to do with trees? Maybe not.
It was doing this the other night, too.
I think it just likes hearing your voice.
Is that it? You need some attention?
Hey friends, we're getting ready to lower the ship.
Right, we'll be right there. Come on.
Alright. Let's go, Birdie. What's wrong? Calm down. We gotta get off this boat. Thanks. Are you doing this to me? Yeah, I guess we made it already, huh?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, it's pretty out here. The bird thinks so too. The water looks like glass.
Lights are going down.
The bird got really freaked out back there.
I picked up on that.
I didn't do anything crazy, did I?
No. You didn't answer anyone, so I had to make up something.
What do you make up?
I told them that it's part of our religion for women to not speak while going down waterfalls.
Alright then. If it works, it works. He said it was a city built on peace and love. I can't wait to see what it looks like.
Me neither.
Can't you see it? You know, in his mind?
It's blurry. But we should be there any minute now.
Cool. Yeah? Really? Well, don't get any ideas.
The light all around us turned into a solemn and a brilliant orange, and the water turned to a dark, almost black purple. We saw the roofs of neat wooden triangular houses all facing off in different directions. Many different houses, all different sizes, silhouetted by the light. As we grew closer to the city, the shingles and the roofs gained a sense of form. All amber, just like Dedjerba said. Their shingles were shaped like rose petals. As night fell, men and women emerged from their houses to light lanterns that cast warm and homely lights out onto the water for miles. They paddled through the streets in their gondolas, laughing and singing and breaking bread with each other. I could just barely hear the sound over the noise of the river softly pushing us along. The closer we grew, the more details popped out to me. The round wooden windows above the rectangular doors. The porches and docks on which people shared conversations with friends. The flags and banners waving overhead. The small exposed island from which a complex for the harbor had been built. The ships arriving in the harbor to bring food, oil, metals, woods, and fibers from cities that existed closer to the lake's edge, next to towering warehouses built clumsily onto the lonely hillside. Networks of catwalks connected shops in what looked like a bustling downtown. A few larger buildings on stilts in the foreground appeared to be factories.
It's so fucking beautiful, man.
I know, all of this is beautiful. You know, you're a pretty good person to get trapped in a hexateron with.
You too, John. Hey, I wonder if they've discovered grass yet.
Grass?
Or anything like that here.
Oh, you mean like, oh, grass. Yeah, I don't know. I guess we'll find out.
Dedjerba descended from his perch at the top of the ship and came up beside us.
My good friends, we have arrived. I trust you will find our fair city to your liking. If I may, I would most certainly welcome you to board with me.
Oh, well, thank you very much for the offer. We'd love to stay with you. Thank you so much for your hospitality.
He assumed the mantle of helmsman, letting he who had served as helmsman go below deck to rest his hands a bit. People got confused about the jobs that people had aboard ships, and they generally assumed that the helmsman was in fact the explorer, and he did not want to risk having the people mistake the actual helmsman for him, the explorer. We reached the port where we were welcomed by a gleeful and ecstatic crowd. The ship knocked against the pier and 2 men hopped out to tether it to posts.
There's quite the crowd, Captain.
Sure, we're all anxious to hear about what you found.
Dedjerba crossed his arm, with a melancholy look in his eyes that seemed to the others who looked at him like a triumphant confidence. Behind the shadow of his furrowed brow, he brooded and stroked his magnificent beard. Above all other things on his mind, he was very concerned with whether or not he had it in him to give a rousing enough speech for the crowd to carry him all the way home, or if they would only make it halfway, and in doing so, leave him at the tavern, from where he would have to walk the entire way back to his house. That happened when he went to the forests of Tur-ang-Shuil-Beth. He didn't want to walk, though, either way. Home was a long way from the harbor. He'd also hate for them to carry him home in celebration and to leave his guests and his crew members stranded at the harbor, too. After his voyage to the legendary crystal caves of Burhal, he'd felt bad enough that they'd left behind a sailor who'd done a perfectly fair share of work. But the crew on deck probably wanted to get drunk anyhow. They were all young and neophytes to the whole exploration game, and so being deposited at the tavern would not appear to them to be the insult that it truly was. He also reckoned that the crowd probably didn't know the addresses of the other sailors so well as they knew his from his numerous celebrated journeys to afar, and so those sailors would have to give directions, which was a difficult thing to do in and of itself when you were being carried by a crowd of cheering admirers. Beyond the logistics of getting carried home, Dedjerba felt a second weight press on him, one that I couldn't quite understand well enough to express yet. Something to do with the crowd, reading its tastes and predicting what kinds of stories the crowd would best like to hear, although these were not the stories he wanted most to tell. Stories that sat in a set of 13 sealed wooden chests in the ship's cargo hold. Eventually he climbed up onto the highest point of the boat, pulling Sapphire and I up with him.
John, look.
What?
That's the dam.
I saw it moving in the distance, lit up by the lights of the city. I saw its huge water wheels with their churning canals. The look on Sapphire's face was the kind of look that would lead up to something between a shrug and a sigh, but she didn't move or make a sound. She just looked at the dam, watching its wheels turn, watching the water pour through them. Dedjerba rose his hands before the crowd. Hundreds, if not thousands, had gathered beside the harbor to hear him speak.
Oh, my dear people of Ntia, how I have longed to come home to you, to see again this sparkling jewel in the river god's crown, to tell you of the wonders which I have seen in my travels to far-off lands, the likes of which cannot be imagined, places where men walk on stilts and balance teacups on their noses, where spirit birds with magnificent songs and spectacular wings soar through the skies, belching fire and ether, where queer dwarves scurry about in castles made of gemstones. I have seen lands where there are mountains made of glass, deserts in which there live warrior women who walk on their hands and carry their baskets on the tops of their feet. Lands where people speak in whistles, where flowers of indescribable colors bloom beneath the light of dancing suns. And yet, after all I have seen, nothing compares to seeing this city again. To see the love on your faces, the peace in your hearts. Please, cherish this place. Do not let yourselves falter. There are not only beautiful things I have seen at the edge of the world, but terrible things also. Famines caused by greedy kings. Droughts that have turned entire forests to cinders and ashes. Wars that have turned brother against brother. Sister against sister. Hister against hister. Herther against herther. Husband against wives. Wives against husbands. Liaisons against clients, and clients against liaisons. And having seen the dreadful things that go on there at the edges of the world, I must tell you that this peace here in Ntia is more precious than any of the foreign riches I have brought you, more valuable than any of the colonies that we will soon attend to from afar, more sacred than all of the fish and rice and gold in this river. Peace, as the great Ntia himself once said, being not order but freedom. May our lanterns all run out of oil, our hearths all run out of firewood, our warehouses run out of grain before we let the soul of our great city go the way of the despotic kingdoms I have known in foreign lands, before we let the words of peace and love ever be worn away from our hearts. We have certainly brought back splendid bounty to share with you all in peace and in love. We bring from the foreign lands seeds and leaves of plants that the foreigner smokes in a pipe through his nose to produce a state like drunkenness.
They've got grass here, John.
Fruits,
Sounds like it, huh?
vegetables.
We're gonna get high in a city in another fucking dimension.
The appeal was lost on me. I had been high on acid for about 1,000 years or something.
Zinc, quartz, mica, golden powders, unthings, and void stuffs.
The fuck is void stuffs?
It's like a specialized type of thing.
Oh, thanks for answering my question.
Indoor
Really
mountains,
clears it up.
where oxen with huge feathered wings and tails of scorpions stampede across radiant open valleys, where kingdoms of dwarf men who speak peculiar tongues partake in strange orgies around towering bonfires, where the flowers glow in the night so that the fields look like faraway cities. Their whole expedition, unfortunately, met their deaths while trekking through a dreaded place called the Fire Swamp. What a joy it is to bring them here so that they may speak with you. John, would you like to say a few words?
Dedjerba motioned for me to speak. I cleared my throat and I moved forward. So many people. So many people. Seeing all of them there, waiting for me to tell them about my adventures, and hearing all their thoughts coming in at once, and comprehending all of them at the same time. All of their faces just paralyzed all of my senses.
Greetings, people of Ntia. Nice to see all of you. I have heard of your city from afar. Many marvelous things, but none were so great as what you all seeing you all. This. Sorry, I caught something in my throat. I'm called John, and this is my navigator Sapphire. We are both from the kingdom of California.
A hush fell over the crowd. Dedjerba raised his eyebrows, stunned. California, they all thought at once, different words and images, was one of the 50 mystical domains in the heavenly sphere where all the spirits of the ancestors lived. Perhaps the name was a coincidence, but a strange coincidence it was. California was home to the god of quartz, and perhaps we were his emissaries, they thought. Just then it hit me. This place had once been the real world, the world that I remembered. The names of states must have been passed down through generations, ingrained into the religion and the collective memory. My heart sank as I realized that, in all likelihood, people and places we once knew were long gone. That in killing Rye, we had altered the fabric of reality itself.
Yes, and were it not for the generous and heroic assistance of Dedjerba, perhaps myself and my navigator would have perished trying to reach this place. And so we will be eternally grateful for his assistance, and hope you'll be so kind as to let us stay here as we rest and recover for our return home.
Dedjerba, relieved that I had cut my speech short and not taken the opportunity to expound upon the wonders of the foreign lands, climbed down from on top of the ship's cabin and dove into the arms of the adoring crowd. He motioned subtly for us to join him, and we too leapt into their arms, carried over boardwalks, alongside canals, and up stairways to a tall wooden house.
Well, hello everyone. It's a lovely day here in Colorado. I'm just out on my porch. It's the first time I've gone outside all day, listening to the birds sing. My name is Timmy Vilgiate, and I'm the writer and producer of Rivers of the Mind. Sorry this episode's about a day and a few hours late. We do have good news, though. We're going to be published in a literary journal called The Senecal, published by Scripter Press New England. Check it out if you are, a fan of the show, or if you're kind of just tuning in. It's going to be out, I think, on May 8th. The first 2 episodes as a novelization. It's going to be really cool. We actually added in some stuff too, fixed up some writing stuff in those first couple episodes. So it's a lot of fun. With that said, I'll get into the credits real quick. I'm Timmy. I wrote the show, produced it, and all that. I also played the part of John, and Eurycleo. Sophia Doss played the part of Sapphire, and Merriam played the part of Dedjerba. Nicholas Kline played the part of Telemakso, and sound effects were provided by freesound.org. If you would like to support the show, you can go onto our Patreon account, patreon.com/Timmy Vilgiate. And if you are interested in following us on Facebook for updates and occasional memes, just search Rivers of the Mind on Facebook, or follow us on Twitter at Rivers of the Mind.
They paint their eyelids deeper shades of red, safe in the places that we'd never go to. We tint our windows all the color blue. You'll never recognize the city that you knew. You look out and you see that it's true. Safe above from a modern view. All the people who are different from you. Their armies march down the avenue, and you never recognize the city that you knew. I watch the TV and I read the news. They tell me stories and they sell me shoes. I put their politics over my skin. I wear their crucifix, I pay their rent. I shout their slogans and I raise their flag. I sing their anthems and I say their lines. The shades of colors all bleed to one. And who could know the damage they've done? You look out and you see that it's true. Safe above from a modern view. All the people who are different from you. Their armies march down the avenue, and you never recognize the city that you knew. Walk along down the exact same street, with our eyes on a backlit screen. We write poems about ourselves, but we pretend they're about someone else. When we look up, the image stays over everything our eyes still see. We tell our friends what the city's like. None of our stories seem to fit quite right. You look out and you see that it's true. Safe above from a modern view. All the people who are different from you. Their armies march down the avenue, and you never recognize the city that you knew. Never recognize the city that you knew. Never recognize the city that you knew.
Rivers of the Mind is brought to you by Surf. Are you tired of having to find a crowd of cheering admirers to carry you home all by yourself? Try Surf, a crowd-sharing app that Wired magazine calls good. Surf connects you with a crowd of cheering admirers in your area who will carry you wherever you need to go. Try it out today and use the promo code Rivers of the Mind, that's Rivers of the Mind with no spaces, to get 20% off your first ride. Worried about social distancing in light of the pandemic? Don't worry. Surf is technically an essential service, so it's perfectly legal. And if you test positive for coronavirus after a surf trip, we'll refund up to half of your fare.